Take by Seabrook, scaled along to Bowling off his stick, turned right back over again and led on out for someone. Paille, he scores! Paille! And the Bruins have won overtime.
Marek Ducash
and Ethan Smythe
back here on the All-Star Sports Show for June 18th, 2013. New day, new time here on the All-Star Sports Show. We have a lot to talk about, ranging from NHL to NBA. My buddy Ethan Smythe's here to help me talk about that. Ethan,
That's right.
How do you feel about the NHL playoffs so far? As we both know, the Boston Bruins lead the Chicago Blackhawks 2-1 in the series.
Well, so far I've seen the Boston Bruins pretty much dominate the Blackhawks, especially last night. Bruins leading this series 2-1, as you mentioned. Tuukka Rask has played over 180 shutout minutes in the TD Garden. Ever since that Toronto series, he's really stepped up his game, and a surprise sniper this series, Dan Paille. I mean, where did this guy come from? He's, tied with Lucic for the series lead in goals, something I did not expect.
I agree with you. Paille, a very underestimated player in my mind, but he can get the job done. A lot of those Bruins can. And speaking about rising stars, Jonathan Toews isn't really a rising star, but I think he's due for a big game in this series, mainly because he hasn't scored a point or got an assist here in this series so far. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the next few games, but I agree with you. I'll take the Boston Bruins in 6.
Well, as you mentioned with Jonathan Toews, the interesting thing about him is that at the end of the LA series, Quenneville decided to pair him up with Patrick Kane on the line, and both seemed to get themselves back on track, at least in Game 5. But since then, he's decided to separate them once again. I'm not really sure why, and they're both slumping again. So I think they need to be together. Chicago can have success.
And I'm just going to ask you real quick, if the series ended today, your Conn Smythe winner would be?
Well, Vezina's actually a good segue because it is the goalie, Tuukka Rask of the Boston Bruins. He's played so well this postseason, and especially in this series, that I don't think there's any other choice, really.
And speaking about the Vezina, we're proud to announce Sergei Bobrovsky has won the Vezina, and we'll have a little NHL Awards update in our next segment here on the All-Star Sports Show. Marek Ducash
and Ethan Smythe
back here on the All-Star Sports Show, killing it on this Tuesday morning. NHL Awards just happened, a little bit of an hour show before the Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals. Not a big showing as they have every year, but we're going to go over the awards with you. The most valuable player, the Hart Memorial Trophy. We're going to go over the finalists. Sidney Crosby, Alex Ovechkin, John Tavares, who won it, and why, Ethan?
Well, the winner in my mind is the guy who actually did win it, Alexander Ovechkin of the Washington Capitals. This team was in last place for part of the beginning of the year. Then Ovechkin found his groove, started scoring goals, and what do you know? They wind up finishing third and making the playoffs, which shows his contribution was huge and by far the most valuable to his team, although you could make a case for Tavares.
I think Tavares should have won it, and here's why. I like Alexander Ovechkin. You can pretty much call it a comeback season over his mediocre season 2 years ago. Mainly Tavares because he just makes players better. Josh Bailey and Brad Boyce, he turned into good players there in New York. But a player like that, even Ovechkin, they have the ability to make other players better, and that's why they are finalists for the Hart Memorial. Congrats to Alexander Ovechkin on that. For the Vezina, we have Sergei Bobrovsky, Henrik Lundqvist, and Antti Niemi. Who do you think should have won, and why?
Well, I do think the best goaltender in the world is probably Henrik Lundqvist of the New York Rangers, but the Columbus Blue Jackets wouldn't have even been close to where they were in the standings without Bobrovsky's play. As a guy who likes the Flyers, I was kind of upset that they traded him, but you know what? I'm happy to see him succeed in Columbus. That team's a lot of hard workers, and I think Bobrovsky deserved it.
I think Bobrovsky deserved it as well, but I just want to give a quick shout out to Antti Niemi. If you had a playoff Vezina, he would be the guy. He was absolutely amazing in that Vancouver Canucks series, but obviously the Vezina is for regular season, and that's why our man Sergei Bobrovsky won the Vezina. Now on to the Norris for the best defenseman. We had Letang, Subban, and Suter. Who won it and why, Ethan?
Well, PK Subban did win it, and after a contract holdout that kept him out for the first few games of the year, he was absolutely outstanding, scoring at a rate that you'd expect him to do in an 82-game season. And I think you could make a case for Ryan Suter. He certainly impressed a lot of people in Minnesota this year, his first year after signing the big contract. But I think PK Subban definitely deserved it. Letang is basically a forward on defense. He's not very good at defense, so I'm not quite sure why he was on there. But yeah, Subban, I think, deserved it.
I think Subban did deserve it as well, but then again, I love the Minnesota Wild, and I think Ryan Suter was a huge contribution to that team, making Jonas Brodin obviously better. And another thing, Jonas Brodin, I was pretty mad about that he wasn't in the Calder final for Rookie of the Year. Anyway, our next, and that brings us to the Calder.
That's right.
Huberdeau, Gallagher, and Brandon Saad, pardon me, the finalists. I believe Brandon Saad shouldn't be there. Anybody who plays with Jonathan Toews and Marian Hossa is going to be good. You could put Pete Kozma on that line, and he would have a 50-point season.
That's right.
Give me your thoughts on these finals picks, and we'll go over the winner after.
Well, I tend to agree with the Saad. I think you could have put someone like Nail Yakupov or Jonas Brodin on the ballot. And Jonathan Huberdeau, though, he was probably the best rookie. He would have won it anyway, especially playing on Florida where, let's face it, worst team in the NHL this year. There's not a lot of talent to go around there, but he made other players better. He turned himself into a solid player all on his own, really. I think that he was the best rookie this year.
And on to the Coach of the Year award. This goes to the Coach of the Year in the NHL. And the Coach of the Year this year was Paul McLean of the Ottawa Senators. Boudreau and Quenneville were also the finalists. Personally, I'll give my thoughts first. Quenneville, I don't think he's that great of a coach. He has an amazing team, but really, he is a pretty good coach. And then with Boudreau, I think this guy should have won it. With an absolutely horrible season for Anaheim last year, Boudreau comes in there taking the reins from Randy Carlyle, now the Leafs coach, and he's doing pretty good in Toronto. And Boudreau just turns the Ducks into the second-place team in the West, and they really had the same team as they had 2 years ago. No really major changes for the Ducks. What do you think about this choice of Paul McLean being the winner?
Well, I think if you look at the Ottawa Senators roster this year, they played most of it with basically decimated by injuries. Guys like Jason Spezza, Erik Karlsson, Milan McCulloch, Craig Anderson missing most of the year. And, I might have a little bit of a personal bias here, but I love Paul McLean. I love watching his interviews. He's a really cool guy, and I think that he really exemplifies what a coach should be, just a relaxed kind of guy that helps motivate your players. I give it to McLean.
Thank you for that, and that's it for our NHL Awards recap. We'll be right back with you with Question Time on the All-Star Sports Show. All-Star Sports Show, Merrick Cash.
And Ethan Smythe.
Back for Question Time. We have our first question coming in from the QS Check. And they ask, what do you think of the Rangers coaching change, and how will it impact their playoff chances, obviously, with them bringing in Alain Vigneault?
Well, I think that the Rangers did need to make a change. The line on Tortorella was just getting thin. It's becoming to the point where, John Tortorella was probably the reason that they lost in the second round as much as any other player. He sat Brad Richards and really made a bunch of key mistakes. I think Lundqvist was a good goalie for him, but I think the funny part about this is that the Canucks are now talking with John Tortorella, so there might be sort of a trade, if you will, and I think it benefits both teams. Canucks need more toughness, and the Rangers do need to utilize the skill that they have, like Rick Nash and etc. All right, Merrick, this one comes in from Jose in Tampa. He asks, who will be the three QBs the Eskimos start the season with?
Well, as we just heard as breaking news today, All-Star Sports Show, good place for breaking news. Matt Nichols is out for the season. That's right, Matt Nichols is out for the season. What a joke that is.
Yeah.
Torn ACL, trying to make a block in the preseason. But it does show you what the urgency is of the guys trying to make the team. In a way, it's nice and it's a good gesture for Nichols, but he's out for the season. So think again there, Matt Nichols. I think the starters on opening day are going to be, I really like this Jonathan Crompton guy. A few, as our CFL insider QB Bueller will be joining us next week. He'll be talking a lot about that guy. Jonathan Crompton just signed out of the NCAA a few weeks ago for the Eskimos. He made a few good passes, and he has a few mechanics things to work on, but he has the ability to be a good starter in the CFL. I think Kerry Joseph's going to be around there for a mentor, and their starter is going to be Mike Riley. That solves the Eskimos quarterback situation. Ethan, this next one comes in from Pat in Toronto. When Brandon Morrow and J.A. Happ return to the rotation, who's going to go down?
Well, as far as I know, these two are not really all that close to coming back, so it's a little hard to predict for the moment. But as I see it, Chin-Ming Wong is definitely a guy that's basically just there. I mean, he's not going to last for much longer. You know, he's just a filler at the moment. And the other guy that would
But
go
let's
down,
just say the two guys on their rotation that obviously, not looking at any numbers, you would take off Esmail Rogers and Chin-Ming Wong, but both of those guys are having quality starts.
well, what I would do is I'd take Esmail Rogers, put him back into the bullpen, and send down a guy like Todd Redmond or Neil Wagner that's on the team right now that recently got called up from Buffalo. Take Rogers back to the bullpen, put Morrow and Happ in the rotation, and send Wong down to AAA.
And that sounds like a good solution for now, but if those guys do start to perform as of Rogers, they might make their decision a whole lot harder than it needs to be. This next one, Ethan.
All right, well, this one comes in from LeBron in Miami. He asks, if the Heat lose the finals, is Eric Spoelstra safe?
And I believe Eric Spoelstra will be safe, as if the Chicago Blackhawks lose the finals. Joe Quenneville will be safe. If you get your team to the finals, obviously you're going to be safe. But you got to ask the question, Eric Spoelstra, if he does lose this one, he will have lost 2 of the last 3 NBA finals. But I'm just going to get your thoughts on LeBron's question.
Well, I mean, if you look at the stats, LeBron is actually leading all the stats for Miami, the key stats, points, rebounds, assists. He's been the player for Miami, even at times when guys like Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh have struggled. Eric Spoelstra's gotten this team to 3 straight finals. That's pretty impressive, but really when you look at the grand scheme of things, I don't see him getting fired.
And that's it for Question Time on the All-Star Sports Show. We'll be back with All-Star of the Week.
All right, now it is time for the All-Star of the Week, Ethan Smythe.
Merrick DeCash.
All right, we'll be joining you today. Merrick, who is your All-Star of the Week?
I'm going to go with an unexpected pick from the Toronto Blue Jays, Adam Lind. This guy is absolutely tearing it up. This guy has gotten a hit in 9 of his last 11 games. He tore it up against Texas. Not a good start to his Colorado series, but this guy's hitting over 500 against lefties. And there was a bunch of confusion about him being able to hit lefties, but he can sure hit lefties, that's alright. Now, Ethan, your All-Star of the Week.
My All-Star of the Week comes from the Stanley Cup Final. It's a pretty obvious pick if you look at what's been going on lately, and it is Tuukka Rask of the Boston Bruins. I'd like to correct a mistake that I made earlier. It's not 180 shutout minutes, but the last goal that he gave up was 8:51 into the second from Chris Kunitz all the way back in the Pittsburgh series, at least at home is what I'm talking about here. He shut out Pittsburgh in Game 4, shut out Chicago last night, and has been absolutely dynamite. He's got a 1.64 goals against, leads all goalies in the Stanley Cup playoffs so far, and I'd be stunned if he doesn't win the Conn Smythe if Boston can win the Cup.
And thank you for that. That's it. That wraps up the All-Star Sports Show for this week. That wraps up the All-Star Sports Show for June 18th, 2013. And Merrick DeCash,
And Ethan Smythe.
you can check us out at our Twitter at
All-Star Sports 88.
or send us an email at allstarsportshow@gmail.com. Until next week, see ya later.